You feel pain like no other pain, and you know that in your life it's going to be very difficult to...
The cancellation did not begin with an official announcement. It began with one look. Prince William entered the backstage corridor at Windsor, expecting routine greetings, controlled smiles, and a carefully managed event. Instead, he saw Queen Camilla's son standing where he was not meant to be. Within minutes, the room changed. Aides froze, and the prince made the decision no one expected. The Windsor event was cancelled on the spot. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William stopped before anyone else understood why. His expression did not collapse into anger at first. It hardened into something far more dangerous. The prince had arrived for a Windsor event that was meant to prove unity after weeks of private strain. A royal appearance designed to show the family standing together before the public. A royal appearance simply means an official event where members of the monarchy are expected to represent the crown, and this one was supposed to feel calm, polished, and carefully controlled. Instead, Tom Parker Bowles stood backstage, and the future king saw a boundary being crossed in real time. Camilla felt the shift before anyone explained it to her. She knew William had seen her son, and she knew the prince was not reading the moment as an innocent mistake. The backstage area was not a family waiting room. It was a controlled space reserved for working royals, senior aides, and approved figures tied directly to the event. That mattered because access behind the curtain carries meaning inside the monarchy. It suggests trust. It suggests permission. It suggests a place close to power. And William believed that place had been treated too casually. The closed door changed everything. A senior aide moved quietly toward the access point and shut it without making a speech. But the gesture landed like a verdict. William did not need to raise his voice. He looked at the schedule, then looked toward the corridor, and the decision formed before anyone dared ask the question. The Windsor appearance would not continue. The guests waiting outside would never see the moment they had come for. The palace machine, built to avoid embarrassment, had just been forced into embarrassment by the one man preparing to inherit its future. Camilla did not move when the news reached her. The queen consort understood that this was no longer about Tom alone. It was about whether her family's closeness to palace life had gone too far. William understood it too, and that was why he would not soften. What looked like a cancelled event was really the first open crack in a deeper battle over boundaries, privilege, and control. And to understand why one man backstage could stop Windsor cold, the story must move toward the private loyalties now colliding behind palace doors. Every royal crisis has a public face, but this one had several. William stood as the future king, guarding the line between family affection and royal duty. Camilla stood as a mother, wounded by a decision that struck close to home. Tom stood suddenly exposed, no longer a quiet guest but the center of a storm. And Charles found himself trapped between the woman beside him and the son who would inherit the crown. William carried more than anger in that moment. He carried the pressure of Windsor Protocol, the set of rules and customs that decide who may enter private royal spaces, who may stand near official events, and who must remain outside the machinery of the crown. That mattered, because the prince was not simply protecting a doorway. He was protecting the idea that royal access should mean duty, not personal comfort. He knew every small exception could become a bigger weakness later, and the future king had already decided his reign would be shaped by discipline, restraint, and fewer blurred lines. Camilla felt the wound differently. She had tried for years to keep her children close enough to feel included, but distant enough to avoid looking like they were taking royal status for themselves. Tom had never been a working royal, meaning he did not carry out official duties on behalf of the monarchy, and that difference mattered deeply inside the palace. To William, his presence backstage looked like a test of authority. To the queen consort, the cancellation felt like a judgment on her family, her place, and the private life she had fought to protect. Charles received the message before the public understood anything had changed. A private note reached the king with one brutal truth. The prince would not walk out until the backstage matter was settled. Charles read it once, then again, and his face showed the conflict he could not escape. He loved Camilla. He understood William. And he knew that if he forced his son forward for the sake of appearance, he would be asking the future king to swallow a boundary he believed had already been broken. Tom said almost nothing, and somehow that silence made everything worse. He did not defend himself loudly. He did not try to turn the moment into a misunderstanding. But no explanation could erase the image of him standing where William believed he should not have been. Camilla saw that silence harden around her son like a second accusation, and Charles knew the palace had moved beyond embarrassment into something far more dangerous. Behind this clash was an older wound, one that had not begun at Windsor at all. It had begun weeks earlier, in a private royal moment that changed how William viewed Camilla's circle forever. The palace did not arrive at this crisis overnight. Before the cancelled event, before the locked corridor, before William's expression hardened, there had been another evening. A private dinner at Clarence House had ended with one sentence that no one forgot. It was not shouted, it was not written down, but it traveled through the family like a warning, and from that night onward, William began watching every boundary more closely. William remembered the dinner because it had felt too relaxed in the wrong way. Clarence House, a royal residence used by senior members of the family for private and official life, had hosted Charles, Camilla, the prince, Tom, and a small circle of trusted household figures. The meal was meant to calm tension, not create more of it. Charles wanted peace. Camilla wanted warmth. Tom seemed comfortable, but then he referred to future Windsor access as family ground, and William heard something dangerous hiding beneath the casual tone. Camilla tried to smile through the moment, but she saw the prince's face change. To her, Tom had spoken like a son trying to belong near his mother's world. To William, the phrase sounded like entitlement wrapped in family language. Windsor was not simply a home. It was a royal base, a place tied to duty, security, and public trust. That mattered, because every person allowed near official spaces carried symbolic weight. If private closeness became enough to open doors, then the structure around the crown could slowly lose meaning. Charles felt the air tighten before anyone else spoke again. The king looked from William to Camilla, then toward Tom, and he understood the damage had already been done. He did not challenge the phrase. He did not defend it either. That silence left everyone trapped with their own interpretation. William finished the evening quietly, but quiet did not mean calm. The future king left Clarence House with a cold fury, convinced that the monarchy could not survive if private family familiarity blurred royal order. A palace aide later noted the consequence in a documented household account prepared after the dinner. William had asked for a review of Backstage access lists, and that request was not routine. It was a warning. Camilla felt humiliated when she sensed the prince pulling away, because she believed her children were being judged before any real harm had been done. But William believed the harm had already started the moment Tom treated royal access like inherited comfort. The Windsor event became the first major test of that new caution. Every list mattered. Every doorway mattered. Every name near the backstage area carried meaning. So when Tom appeared there despite the tension from Clarence House, William no longer saw coincidence. He saw the old sentence come alive again. And when the prince turned and asked why Camilla's son was standing behind the curtain, the question carried the weight of every warning that had come before it. The public never saw the confrontation, but those inside Windsor felt it. A door closed. Footsteps stopped. William faced Camilla with no cameras, no audience, and no ceremonial politeness to soften the moment. She tried to explain. He did not raise his voice. That made it worse. His calmness turned the room colder than anger. because everyone understood he had already made his decision. William asked for the private conversation before any public appearance could continue. Camilla entered carrying the pain of a mother, but the prince entered carrying the burden of the crown. A public appearance means an official royal moment where the family is expected to represent stability before the nation, and cancelling one was never small. It mattered because Windsor had been prepared to show unity, not expose division. It mattered because every person waiting outside believed the monarchy still knew how to control its own house. Camilla defended Tom with a voice that tried to stay steady. She told William her son had not meant to cross a line, and she believed that should matter. The Queen Consort saw a family mistake being treated like a royal crime. But the prince did not accept that explanation. He told her intention could not erase protocol, because protocol is the rule system that protects royal duty from private pressure. To him, this was not about punishing Tom. It was about stopping a pattern before it became accepted. William's disappointment cut deeper than anger. He had warned about backstage access. He had seen the danger after the Clarence House dinner, and now the same concern stood directly in front of him, dressed as a harmless misunderstanding. Camilla looked at him as if asking for mercy without saying the word. The prince looked back as if mercy had already been used too many times. That silence hurt because both of them understood the truth. This was no longer only about Tom. It was about who had the right to stand close to power. The moment became final when William placed the event schedule on the table. He did not throw it down. He did not make a scene. He simply set it there and said the appearance could not continue under these circumstances. Camilla heard the word cancelled, and everything in her face changed. The Queen Consort stopped defending, stopped explaining, stopped reaching for softer language. She understood the prince had not come to negotiate. He had come to draw the line. Charles knew before entering that something had already broken. The king had been informed, but he did not immediately step between them, and that choice spoke loudly. William walked out with the decision still standing. Camilla remained behind with the wound still fresh. And once the prince left that room, the question was no longer whether the event would happen. It was who inside the monarchy still had the power to stop him. Power inside a palace rarely announces itself loudly. It appears in who gets the final call, whose silence changes the room, and whose decision no one dares reverse. After William cancelled the Windsor event, Charles was handed the problem no father wanted: defend his wife's family, or acknowledge that the future king had acted to protect the crown. The monarch sat with the choice, and the weight of it showed on his face. Charles knew every person around him was waiting for one thing: reversal. As monarch, meaning the reigning head of the royal family and the person with the final formal authority, the king could have softened the crisis with a single instruction. He could have told William to continue. He could have asked Camilla to accept a quiet apology later. But that would have mattered deeply, because forcing the prince forward would show the household that protocol could bend when the pressure came from inside the family. It would also tell William that his judgment could still be overruled when the truth became uncomfortable. William's decision carried power even before Charles confirmed it. The prince was not yet king, but everyone inside Windsor understood that the future already had a voice. Palace officials began asking who had approved the backstage access, why Tom Parker Bowles had reached that area, and why no one had stopped him before William saw him. Backstage access means permission to enter the private working area behind an official event, and inside royal life, that permission is never casual. It matters because the wrong person in the wrong place can turn a ceremony into a family scandal. Camilla waited for Charles to protect her from the full force of the moment. She was not asking him to humiliate William. She was asking him to make the pain smaller, to explain Tom's presence as a mistake, to let the event continue and bury the argument behind polished smiles. But the king hesitated. That hesitation hurt her more than a refusal, because Camilla understood what it meant. The monarchy was moving beyond personal protection. Her husband was no longer only weighing her feelings. He was weighing the crown. Charles read the access note in silence. The note named the sequence clearly, Tom Backstage. William informed. Event paused. Cancellation confirmed. The king removed his glasses, set the paper down and said nothing. That silence became the hidden verdict. William's cancellation would stand. No public correction would be issued to defend Tom. No palace line would suggest the prince had overreacted. Camilla watched the room understand the decision before anyone dared speak it aloud. The choice changed everything. William had not been stopped. Charles had not reversed him. Camilla had not been given the protection she expected. And Tom, still at the center of a storm he could no longer control, became the reason the palace had to examine its own doors. With the decision upheld, the machinery began to move. By the time the household phone started ringing, Camilla understood that this was no longer a family disagreement. It had become policy. The cancellation spread through Windsor like a controlled fire. Aides removed guest cards. Security lists were rewritten. Staff members who had been smiling minutes earlier now spoke in lowered voices. But the deepest damage was not logistical. It was personal. Camilla sat apart from the movement around her, realizing that her son's name had become attached to a royal event that never happened. William stood firm while the household tried to contain the shock. The event team received a direct order to cancel the public appearance, meaning the official moment where royals were meant to appear before invited guests and represent unity. That mattered because Windsor had not planned for absence. It had planned for confidence. Every empty seat, every changed message, every quiet phone call risked telling the world that something had gone wrong before the palace could explain it. Camilla sat alone in a side room and gripped her handbag tightly. She heard movement outside, but no one rushed in with comfort. The Queen consort knew why aides avoided her eyes. Tom Parker Bowles had already been linked to the collapse, and even silence now felt like accusation. Palace communications prepared a neutral explanation, a public statement designed to sound calm without revealing the private wound behind it. But everyone inside knew the truth. The Backstage incident had broken the event before it ever reached the public. William felt the cost, even if he did not show regret. The prince understood that canceling a Windsor event embarrassed the family. And that mattered, because monarchy survives on control, timing, and the belief that private conflict never interrupts public duty. Yet he also knew that allowing the appearance to continue would send a worse message inside the household. It would tell people that rules could bend when the person involved stood close enough to power. The future king would not let that become normal. Tom was quietly escorted away before the wider guest list understood what had happened. He did not make a scene, and that restraint only made the moment feel heavier. Camilla knew her son's exit would be remembered by those who witnessed it, even if no one spoke openly. William knew it too, and that was why he refused to let the story turn into confusion. The boundary had been crossed. The response had to be clear. The palace moved fast after that. A revised access protocol was prepared the same afternoon, limiting non-working family members from private event zones without written clearance. Access protocol means the rules deciding who may enter restricted royal spaces. And this new version mattered because it turned William's anger into policy. Camilla felt the emotional distance grow. The prince felt the monarchy shift under his own decision. And after the phone stopped and the corridors emptied, William faced the one person whose response mattered more than any official statement. Not every turning point comes with shouting. Some arrive in the quiet after the damage is done. William stood away from the aides, away from the cancelled program, away from the machinery of palace control. Charles entered without ceremony. For the first time that day, father and son were alone. No officials stood between them. No prepared words softened the truth. What followed changed the crisis from rebellion into recognition. Charles closed the distance slowly, and William did not look away. The king had requested the private conversation himself, away from the main Windsor staff corridor, where every whisper could become a signal. That mattered, because until that moment, the crisis had been handled by aides, schedules, and access lists. An access list means the approved record of who can enter restricted spaces during a royal event, and this one had become the paper trail behind the pain. But now, no list could speak for them. Only father and son could. William spoke first, and the words carried more sadness than victory. He told Charles the decision had been painful, but the crown could not keep bending rules to protect private sensitivities. The crown means the monarchy as an institution, not just the person wearing it, and that mattered, because William was defending something larger than his own pride. He knew Camilla was hurt. He knew Tom's name had become attached to shame. But the prince also believed that if private comfort kept opening official doors, the future would inherit chaos. Charles listened with the tired face of a man who knew the truth had arrived late. He was not angry in the way William expected. The king looked worn down, because he recognized that his son had done what he himself had delayed doing. For years, Charles had tried to balance love with duty, Camilla with public expectation, family warmth with royal discipline. But balance had become weakness, and William had forced the monarchy to stop pretending the problem could be managed quietly forever. The room changed when Charles finally answered. He told William he would not reverse the cancellation. The sentence was simple, but it landed like history closing one chapter and opening another. The prince did not celebrate. He only breathed, as if the weight had shifted but not disappeared. Charles had not chosen against Camilla as a wife. He had chosen not to weaken William as a future king. That difference mattered, even if the pain remained. William understood what had just happened. Charles had allowed the cancellation to stand, and by doing so, he had turned a private confrontation into a royal signal. The king understood it too. Father and son were no longer divided by the decision. They were joined by its cost. And once that understanding moved beyond palace walls, the cancelled event became more than gossip. It became the image Britain could not stop discussing. By morning, the palace could no longer control the shape of the story. The cancelled Windsor event had escaped the corridors and entered the national imagination. One image dominated the conversation: William standing firm, while Camilla's family connection hovered behind the decision. It was no longer just about backstage access. It had become a public test of what kind of monarchy the future king intended to build. William woke to a country already judging him. Palace communications had released a restrained statement about program adjustments, a careful phrase meant to suggest routine changes without admitting the deeper rupture. Palace communications means the team responsible for shaping official royal messages before they reach the public, and that mattered because the monarchy depends on calm language when private chaos threatens to break through. But this time, the words were too smooth. People sensed something had been hidden. The silence around Tom made the statement feel even louder. Camilla felt exposed as the story moved beyond Windsor. Commentators were no longer speaking about her son as a private guest who had stood in the wrong place. They were discussing him as a symbol of blurred boundaries, and the queen consort understood the danger of that framing. Blended family ties means the personal family connections created through marriage. And inside a monarchy, those ties matter, because the public watches who gains closeness to power. Camilla had wanted her family treated with dignity. Instead, Tom's name had become the center of a national argument. William's supporters saw discipline. His critics saw humiliation. That split mattered because the prince's future authority was being tested before he ever became king. Broadcasters framed the cancellation as a rare glimpse into the struggle between royal bloodline, private loyalty, and institutional control. One morning presenter said, in a recorded broadcast, that the moment showed a future king refusing to inherit confusion. The phrase spread quickly, because it gave the public a simple version of a painful truth. William was no longer willing to protect appearances at any cost. The front page made everything impossible to ignore. A London newspaper ran the headline, "William draws the line at Windsor," above a stark image of the palace gates. The picture did not need to show the confrontation. The gates said enough. They suggested entry, exclusion, power, and the question everyone was now asking, who truly belonged behind them? Camilla saw the headline and understood that the argument had escaped family control. William saw it and understood that his decision had become bigger than the cancelled event. A small crowd gathered outside Windsor Castle near the barriers. One woman told a broadcaster, "He did what a king has to do before he becomes one." That single sentence captured the public mood better than any official statement. Charles heard the reaction. Camilla felt its sting. William felt its burden. And when the noise finally began to settle, only one truth remained inside the monarchy. The cancelled event had delivered a verdict no statement could soften. In the end, the cancelled Windsor event was not remembered because chairs went empty or guests were turned away. It was remembered because one boundary finally held. William saw Camilla's son backstage, understood what the moment represented, and chose the crown over comfort. The decision hurt people. It embarrassed the palace. It wounded a mother. But it also revealed the future king's clearest message. Access would no longer be confused with entitlement. William understood the cost before anyone praised him for strength. The Windsor cancellation had turned a private access issue into a public statement about future discipline. And that mattered, because the monarchy cannot survive if official spaces begin to look like family favors. Backstage access rules mean the written limits deciding who may enter private areas behind royal events. And after this crisis, those rules carried new force. The prince had shown that under his influence, personal closeness would no longer be enough to open royal doors. Camilla carried the pain longer than the headlines did. She knew Tom Parker Bowles had become more than her son in the public story. He had become the line William used to separate family loyalty from royal duty. The Queen Consort did not see that line as clean. She saw it as personal, sharp, and humiliating. But even through the hurt, Camilla understood why the decision had landed so powerfully. The palace had spent too long softening private tensions, and this time, the prince refused to let softness become weakness. Charles accepted the cost with a quiet heaviness that followed him even after the official pressure faded. The king knew protecting the institution sometimes meant allowing pain inside the family, and that truth cut deeper than any public criticism. He did not reverse William. He did not issue a correction to protect Tom. He allowed the revised rules to stand, and that decision mattered because it confirmed the cancellation was not an emotional outburst. It had become permanent practice. Tom's removal from the event was not treated as scandal alone. It became the moment that forced Windsor to define who belonged behind the curtain and who did not. The curtain meant more than fabric or privacy. It stood for the hidden space where royal power is prepared before the public ever sees it. William had decided that space could not be treated casually. Camilla had learned that motherhood could not override monarchy. Charles had accepted that peace without boundaries was not peace at all. The verdict was complete. William did not cancel Windsor to punish Camilla. He cancelled it to protect the monarchy from becoming a private family favor system. The event that never happened became the clearest sign yet of the reign he is already preparing to shape. Colder, stricter, less forgiving, but built around one unshakable rule: the crown comes first. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.